The Xanthurus system was known far and wide. To the people of Earth, it was a symbol of everything they could never reach a powerful, ancient empire filled with alien species who believed themselves to be superior. The Xyrians, the ruling people of the empire, were the most powerful and revered. Their royal bloodline was a symbol of purity, said to be untouched by any other species for thousands of years. The idea that a human could get close to their royal family seemed impossible, and to most, it was laughable. But Daniel wasn't like most humans. He had spent years studying diplomacy and alien cultures, working for the United Earth government. His mission to Xanthurus was simple: negotiate peace between Earth and the Xyrian Empire. Peace was crucial. Earth had been expanding its reach into space, and the Xyrians, although not hostile, saw humanity's growth as a threat. Daniel stepped off the transport shuttle onto the royal landing dock. The air was thick with the scent of foreign flowers, a sharp contrast to the cold air of Earth. His heart raced as he walked toward the palace, a towering structure made of glimmering crystal and stone. It wasn't just a palace. It was a symbol of everything humans could never attain. Princess Lyra was the crown jewel of the Xyrian family. Young, powerful, and untouchable, she carried the weight of her empire's future. She had never spoken to a human before, and most Xyrians believed that a royal should never lower themselves to interact with such inferior species. But as Daniel entered the palace's grand hall, he saw her standing at the end of the long marble corridor. Her royal armor gleamed under the bright lights, and her eyes, though sharp, held a hint of curiosity. Daniel had heard the stories about Princess Lyra. Many spoke of her strength and her dedication to her people. She had always been a symbol of authority, respected by her people and feared by their enemies. No one had ever dared question her rule. As Daniel approached, the room grew silent. All eyes were on him, and he could feel their judgment. But when Princess Lyra spoke, it wasn't with the coldness everyone expected. "Human," she said, her voice smooth but strong. "I have heard of you." Daniel stood straight, offering a respectful bow. "Your Highness," he said, keeping his tone even. "I am Daniel, a diplomat from Earth. I hope we can reach an understanding between our two people." The princess's expression was unreadable as she gazed at him. For a moment, the tension between them felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Daniel could tell the court was waiting for her to dismiss him, as they always did with humans who dared to step into their world. But instead, Lyra's eyes softened ever so slightly. "I have been taught not to expect much from humans," she said. "But perhaps you are different." Daniel wasn't sure if she was mocking him or genuinely curious. Either way, he felt an unspoken challenge in her words. It was the first time in his life he'd been in the presence of someone so powerful and so untouchable. Yet, in that brief moment, something shifted between them. He couldn't quite place it, but he knew she was more than just the cold, distant princess the stories had told. Their conversation continued, each word carefully measured. Princess Lyra listened to Daniel's arguments for peace, her sharp mind processing every sentence, every possibility. Daniel spoke about the future, about the importance of collaboration, about the peace that could be forged between their two species. There were no promises made that day. The negotiation was far from over, and there were many hurdles ahead. But something about the encounter stayed with Daniel. He couldn't explain it, but he couldn't shake the feeling that his mission was more important than just securing Pizit had something to do with Princess Lyra. For the first time, Lyra found herself wondering about Earth. She had always believed that humans were a primitive species, not worthy of much attention. Yet here she was, listening to a human speak about unity and cooperation as if they had the power to make it happen. As they parted ways, Lyra gave Daniel a look that lingered longer than necessary. "We will speak again, human," she said softly, almost as if she were testing him. "But know this, no one, not even you, is allowed to touch royal blood." Daniel left the palace feeling a strange mix of pride and uncertainty. He had survived the meeting, yes, but there was something else, something about Lyra, that made him feel as if the challenge had only just begun. The idea that a human could ever touch royal blood felt impossible, but for the first time, Daniel wondered if the princess's words were more of a warning than a fact. The days following the meeting with Princess Lyra were filled with tension. Daniel, though accustomed to the political games of Earth, found himself caught off guard by the power of the Xyrian royal family. His mission to negotiate peace was going well, but the memory of his conversation with the princess lingered in his mind. Lyra had been different than what he expected. Calm, intelligent, and more curious about him than any Xyrian had ever been toward a human. But as always, there was a distance in her eyes that reminded him of the great divide between their species. For the next few days, Daniel continued his talks with the Xyrian Council, but he noticed that Princess Lyra's presence seemed to weigh heavily on the proceedings. Whenever she entered the room, the air shifted, and the eyes of every Xyrian in the chamber turned toward her. She was their symbol of authority. She wore her crown like a shield, despite the political distance between them. Daniel couldn't ignore the way his thoughts kept drifting back to her. Her words, "Perhaps you are different," echoed. In his mind, he wondered what she meant by that. Is it just a polite remark, or had she sensed something more? Is something beyond the diplomat in him? One evening, after a long day of discussions, Daniel was walking through the palace gardens. The setting sun cast long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawns, and the quiet sound of distant birds singing filled the air. As he walked, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, and to his surprise, it was Princess Lyra. "Human," she said, her voice low and firm, yet there was a slight softness in her tone. "You are always in meetings. Come walk with me." Daniel hesitated for a moment, but there was something in her eyes that made him want to comply. He nodded and fell in step beside her, both walking in silence for a while. The tension that usually surrounded them seemed to melt away as they strolled through the gardens, smell of alien flowers filling the air. "I didn't expect you to come outside of your palace so freely," Daniel said, breaking the silence. "Most royalty would never leave their safe spaces." Lyra glanced at him. "I'm not like most royalty. I've always questioned everything, even the rules." Daniel was surprised by her words. He had been told that the royal family of the Xyrians was strict, their lives ruled by traditions that had been in place for centuries. The idea that Lyra questioned these rules was something he never expected. "Why do you question them?" Daniel asked. Lyra looked ahead, her expression thoughtful. "Because I've seen how they restrict us, how they trap us in a world that doesn't allow for change or growth. I am expected to rule, to be perfect, but in truth, I've never had the chance to live my life for myself." Daniel could sense the pain behind her words. It was the first time he saw her vulnerability, and it made him realize how lonely she must have felt. Despite her power, she was just as human as anyone else. She had dreams, hopes, the longing for freedom that Daniel couldn't help but empathize with. "You don't have to follow all the rules," Daniel said softly. "You have the power to change things." Lyra stopped walking and turned to him. Her eyes met his, and for a moment Daniel felt a connection that went beyond their species or the mission he was on. It was as if she had seen something in him, something that made her believe that maybe he was different. "I don't think I can change everything," she said quietly, "but I want to try. Maybe you could help me." Daniel was taken aback. He hadn't expected her to say that. He had come to Xantharis to negotiate peace, not to change the future of a powerful empire. But something in Lyra's gaze made him pause and think. What if their bond, their growing friendship, could lead to something bigger than just peace? What if they could work together to create a future where humans and Xyrians weren't divided? Before he could respond, Lyra quickly glanced around, as if ensuring they were alone. What I'm saying, it's not something I can share with anyone. You are the first person to hear this. It must remain between us." Daniel nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He wasn't just talking to a princess anymore, he was talking to a woman who had dreams and desires that her empire had tried to keep hidden. He felt honored by her trust, but also fearful of what it might mean. "I understand," he said. "You have my word." For the rest of the evening, they continued to walk in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The garden felt peaceful, but the storm brewing in the palace's walls was far from over. Daniel knew that if he helped Lyra, there would be consequences. The royal family would never accept such a change. And yet, The idea of making a difference in the galaxy, of being part of something that could unite two species, was a challenge he couldn't resist. As they returned to the palace, Lyra turned to him once more. "You are different, Daniel. I don't know why, but I feel it. I will help you, but only if you promise me something." Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued.
Now what is it?
"Promise me that you will always be honest with me, no matter what happens." "I promise," he said, looking her straight in the eye. The connection between them deepened. And for the first time, Daniel wondered if he was about to be part of something far greater than any diplomatic mission. The days that followed the quiet walk in the gardens were filled with uneasy calm. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with Princess Lyra. Her words echoed in his mind. "I want to try. Maybe you could help me." He had promised to help her, but what that help would look like was still unclear. What could he do to change centuries of royal tradition and bring peace between their two species? Every time he met with the royal council, Lyra's eyes seemed to follow him, watching him closely. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a bond that none of the others could see. But to the rest of the Zyrene royal family, Daniel was still nothing more than a human diplomat, an outsider with no place in their world. One evening, as Daniel was finishing a meeting with the Zyrian officials, Lyra quietly approached him in the hall. Her face was serious, and her eyes seemed troubled. "I need your help with something," she said, her voice low. "It's something no one knows, something I've kept hidden for years." Daniel stood up from the chair he had been sitting in and looked at her. "What's going on, Your Highness?" Lyra glanced around to make sure no one was listening. She took a deep breath before speaking again. "The royal bloodline isn't as pure as everyone believes. The history we've been taught about our bloodline being untouched by other species is a lie. There's a secret buried in the royal archives, one that could change everything." Daniel's heart raced. He had known there was something unusual about the way the Zyrians spoke of their royal family. But he hadn't expected this. A secret within the royal archives. What could it mean for the entire empire? "I don't understand," Daniel said, taking a cautious step closer. "What do you mean? And what's the secret?" Lyra looked around one more time, making sure no one was near, before she spoke again, this time more quietly. "My ancestors, our royal family, are not as pure as the legends claim. They have mixed with other species, but the truth has been kept hidden. If anyone in the empire knew this, it would destroy the royal family's reputation and power." Daniel's mind was racing. If the Zyrian people found out the truth, it could lead to chaos. Their entire society had been built on the belief in the purity of their bloodline, and now Lyra was telling him that it was all a lie. "Why are you telling me this?" Daniel asked, his voice a little shaky. "What do you want me to do?" Lyra took a deep breath. "I need your help to uncover the full truth. The royal archives are protected, but I can get us access. We need to find the evidence, Daniel. Believe it's time for the Empire to face the truth, even if it means everything will change." Daniel looked at her, trying to process everything. He had always known that peace with the Zyrians would be difficult, but this was something else entirely. If they could prove the royal bloodline was mixed with other species, it would shatter the Empire's foundation. Lyra seemed determined. She was willing to risk everything, even her own status, to uncover the truth. "I'm with you," Daniel said finally, his voice firm. "I'll help you find the truth, no matter what it costs." Lyra's eyes softened, and for the first time, Daniel saw a glimpse of the person she truly was. Not the cold, untouchable princess, but a woman who was willing to stand up for what she believed in, even if it meant challenging everything she had known. Over the next few days, Daniel and Lyra began secretly meeting in the quiet corners of the palace, discussing their plan. Lyra had access to the royal archives, but it was heavily guarded. The royal family's most trusted officials were stationed at the entrance, and only a few were allowed to enter. But Lyra had a way in. One night, under the cover of darkness, they made their way to the hidden archives beneath the palace. Lyra led Daniel through a series of narrow hallways, their footsteps echoing softly on the stone floors. When they finally reached the entrance to the archives, Lyra stopped and turned to Daniel. Stay close to me, she whispered. If anyone catches us, everything will be ruined. Daniel nodded, his heart racing. He could sense the danger in the air. This wasn't just about finding old records. It was about uncovering a truth that could shake the very core of the Zyrian Empire. Lyra approached the guard station, her expression calm. She spoke to the guards in a low voice, telling them that she needed to review some documents for the council. The guards, respectful of her position, allowed her to pass without question. Daniel followed closely behind, trying to stay out of sight. Inside the archives, the air was thick with dust, and the shelves were lined with ancient scrolls and records. Lyra walked to the back of the room, where a large wooden chest stood against the wall. She opened it carefully, revealing a set of sealed documents. "These are the records I've been looking for," she said, her voice steady, despite the weight of the moment. "The truth is in here." Daniel's fingers trembled slightly. As he reached for the documents, he could feel the gravity of what they were about to uncover. With one move, they could change the future of both humans and Zyrians forever. Lyra carefully opened one of the scrolls, revealing pages filled with strange symbols and words. As they studied the text, it became clear that the royal family's bloodline wasn't as pure as the Empire had claimed. There were references to old alliances, marriages between Zyrians and other species humans among them. It was more than just a secret. It was a truth that had been buried for centuries. As Lyra read the documents, a small smile crossed her face. "It's all here, Daniel. The truth. Now, we have the power to change everything." But Daniel knew the danger wasn't over. Had just uncovered the truth, but what they would do with it could decide the fate of the galaxy. The discovery in the archives had shaken both Daniel and Princess Lyra. They now knew the truth that had been hidden for so long. The Zyrian royal family wasn't as pure as the Empire's legend claimed, but with this knowledge came great risk. The truth could change everything, and the consequences of revealing it were unknown. For the first time, Lyra felt both fear and excitement in equal measure. She had always known that her people needed change, but this truth, this power was more than she had ever imagined. The weight of it settled heavily on her shoulders. It was no longer just about peace with Earth. It was about the future of the entire Zyrian Empire. "I never thought it would come to this," Lyra said quietly, looking at the scrolls they had found in the archives. "I thought I would live my life as the perfect princess, following the rules, keeping everything in its place. But now I see the truth, and it changes everything." Daniel stood beside her, his thoughts running through all the possible outcomes. This truth, it could tear the Empire apart. The royal family would lose all power. The people might not accept it. Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with determination. "I know, but they need to know the truth. Zyrians need to understand that our history isn't what they've been taught. And I can't keep living in this lie. I can't stay silent any longer." Daniel felt a deep sense of respect for her. She wasn't just a princess trying to keep her throne. She was someone who believed in change, even if it meant giving up everything she had known. He had never expected to find this kind of courage in a royal family. But Lyra's words were more than just talk. They were a call to action. "We have to be careful," Daniel said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "If we make this public, it could lead to a war. The royal family won't just give up their power without a fight." "I'm ready for that fight," Lyra replied, her voice firm. "If we expose this secret, I will have to take responsibility for the consequences. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to change things." As they talked, a plan began to form in their minds. Lyra knew that revealing the truth would not be easy, would take time, and it would require careful strategy. She would need the support of key allies, and they had to be ready for the backlash from the royal family. But despite the danger, she felt more alive than she had in years. For the first time, she wasn't just playing a part in a story someone else had written for Hirsch. She was writing her own. But even as she prepared to make this dangerous move, she knew she couldn't do it alone. Daniel's presence, his support, was vital. He had already risked so much to help her, and now they were both on the edge of something big. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Daniel asked, his gaze searching her face. "Once we make this move, There's no going back. We're playing with fire, and it could burn us both. Lyra took a deep breath and nodded. Dada. I've spent my entire life following rules, pretending to be something I'm not. I'm tired of living in the shadows. It's time to face the truth, no matter what happens. Over the next few days, they began to secretly plan their next steps. Lyra used her position to quietly rally support from within the palace. She sought out a few trusted allies, Aryans, who believed in the future of their empire and were ready for change. But as word of her intentions began to spread, whispers filled the halls of the palace. Some of the royal advisors grew suspicious, sensing that something was amiss. The pressure was mounting, and the risk of discovery was growing every day. Daniel and Lyra's secret meetings continued in the quiet corners of the palace. They discussed the best way to expose the truth, and Daniel worked with her to form a strategy that would not only reveal the hidden history of the royal family, but also protect their people from the chaos that would surely follow. It was a delicate balance between revealing the truth and avoiding a full-scale rebellion.
One evening, as they sat together in one of the palace gardens, Lyra looked out at the stars, lost in thought. "There's one more thing," she said quietly.
Her voice almost a whisper. "If we do this, if we expose everything, I will have to take the throne. The Empire won't accept a leader who is not part of the royal bloodline. I may be the only one who can hold things together." Daniel looked at her, understanding the weight of her decision. Are you ready to be the leader they've never expected? To fight for something that will change everything? Lyra turned to face him, her eyes filled with resolve. "I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm willing to try. I've seen what this empire could be, what it should be, and I won't stand by while it falls apart." They both understood the stakes. If Lyra took the throne, it wouldn't just be a political change. It would be a shift in the very heart of the empire. The idea of a non-pure royal bloodline ruling would be unheard of, and the Zyrians would either accept her as their new leader or reject her entirely. But in that moment, Lyra was certain of one thing: she could no longer live a life of silence. Following the rules that had been imposed on her by an empire that no longer reflected her values, we have to act quickly. Can't wait forever. The longer we wait, the more danger we put ourselves in. Lyra nodded, standing tall. Then it's time.
Ready?
Let's make our move. Together, they prepared to face the challenges ahead. The truth was in their hands, and they were ready to change the future of the Zyrian Empire forever. But with that truth came the knowledge that they had made a dangerous choice, one that could either unite the galaxy or tear it apart. The decision to expose the truth had been made. Daniel and Princess Lyra knew the risks, but they were ready to face the consequences. Together, they prepared for the inevitable fight that would follow. The truth about the Zyrian royal bloodline, hidden for centuries, was about to be revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Lyra had carefully chosen a few trusted allies within the royal court, those who had shown signs of questioning the old ways, who were tired of the corruption and the lies. They met in secret, away from the prying eyes of the palace guards. Each meeting was held in a quiet corner of the palace, where they could speak freely without fear of being overheard. The stakes were high. Each decision could tip the balance between success and disaster. "I can't believe we're doing this," one of Lyra's closest allies, Adar, said as he paced back and forth in the room. "If the royal family finds, OUT will all be branded traitors." Lyra stood tall, her face set with determination. "We are not traitors. We are the future of the Zyrian people. The truth has been hidden for too long, and it's time to set things right." Daniel, standing by her side, looked at the group of Zyrians who had gathered in the room. Each of them was nervous, but they all understood the importance of what they were about to do. "We have to be smart about this," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm. "If we want the people to believe us, we need proof. We need to show them the truth in a way they can't ignore." Lyra nodded in agreement. "We'll use the documents from the archives. They will be the key to everything. If we can get those into the hands of the people, the royal family will have no choice but to face the truth." Adar stopped pacing and turned to face Lyra. "You're asking for a revolution, Lyra. You understand that, don't you? If we expose the truth, We risk starting a civil war. The people may turn against us. Some of them won't accept a royal family that isn't pure. This empire may fall apart. Lyra's eyes locked onto Adar's. I understand the risk. But what's the alternative? A future where we continue to live in lies? Where we are ruled by fear and secrecy? That is no future at all. If we want change, we have to fight for it. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, offering his support. We're with you, Lyra. The people deserve the truth, and we're going to make sure they get it. The plan was set in motion. The group would make sure the documents were smuggled into the hands of key leaders and citizens across the empire. They would share the truth with everyone, from the highest nobles to the common people. The royal family would have no choice but to confront the revelations. But as the days passed, the tension within the palace grew. The royal family was on edge, sensing that something was amiss. Whispers filled the halls, and the once-calm atmosphere of the palace had become thick with suspicion. Lyra's actions had not gone unnoticed, and the advisors who had once been loyal to her now began to question her loyalty to the empire. One evening, as Lyra and Daniel were leaving another secret meeting, they were confronted by Vorak, a high-ranking member of the royal council. His cold eyes watched them as they walked through the palace corridors. Princess Vorak said, his voice smooth but filled with a hint of suspicion. I've been looking for you. There are rumors, strange. Rumors about your meetings? Care to explain? Lyra's heart raced, but she maintained her composure. What rumors, Vorak? She asked, her voice steady. Rumors of betrayal, Vorak replied, stepping closer. Rumors that you're working with the humans, planning something ... dangerous. Lyra's mind raced, but she kept her voice calm. I don't know where these rumors are coming from, but I assure you, Vorak, there is no betrayal here. We are only trying to work for peace, as I always have. Daniel stepped forward, sensing the growing danger. You don't have to worry, Vorak. We're just working to ensure that both our people's Zyrians and humans can live in peace. Vorak's gaze shifted between Daniel and Lyra, his suspicion growing. I hope that's all it is, Princess, because if it's not, the consequences will be severe. You should be careful who you trust. With those final words, Vorak turned and walked away, leaving Lyra and Daniel standing in the hallway. It was clear that the walls were closing in on them. The royal family's advisors were starting to suspect that something was amiss, and the pressure to keep their secret meetings hidden was increasing by the day. We need to move faster, Daniel said quietly, his eyes scanning the hallway for any signs of more trouble. The longer we wait, the more dangerous this will become. Lyra nodded, her face hardening with resolve. We don't have a choice. The time for waiting is over. We need to expose the truth, and we need to do it now. They knew the risks. They knew that the consequences of their actions could destroy the empire, but they also knew that they couldn't live with the lie any longer. The people of the Zyrian Empire deserved the truth. Lyra was determined to give it to them. The plan to reveal the royal family's hidden history was set in motion. As the documents were carefully distributed to the people, the tension in the palace continued to rise. The stage was set for the final confrontation. There would be no turning back now. The days following the release of the royal bloodline's hidden truth were filled with tension. The people of the Zyrian Empire, who had lived under the belief that their royal family was pure and untouchable, were now faced with an undeniable reality. Whispers spread across the streets, from the highest towers to the lowest markets. Documents proof of the royal family's secret alliances with other species had been revealed, and there was no going back. Lyra stood at the center of the storm. As the news spread, many loyalists to the royal family were enraged, unable to accept the truth. Some saw her as a traitor, others as a savior, but all of them were afraid of the change that had been set in motion. The empire, once a symbol of strength and unity, was now on the edge of collapse. Are you sure about this, Lyra? Daniel asked, his voice filled with concern. They'd been meeting in secret for days, planning their next move. Once the royal family knows we've exposed them, they won't sit back and let this happen without a fight. Lyra's face was calm, but inside, her heart was racing. She had never expected her actions to create such chaos, but she knew she couldn't back down now. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Daniel. The truth is out. The people deserve it. It's the only way forward." But the royal family wasn't about to let this go easily. The head of the council, Vorak, was furious. He had always believed in the purity of the royal bloodline, and now that it had been tarnished, he saw it as a direct attack on everything he had worked for. He would not allow Lyra or anyone else to challenge the old ways. One morning, Lyra was summoned to the palace. As she entered the grand hall, she felt the weight of every eye on her. The royal advisors, the generals, and the noble families all stood in silent judgment. In the center of the room stood her father, the emperor, his face cold and hard. "Lyra," he said, his voice filled with authority, "you have dishonored this family. You have betrayed everything we have built." Lyra stood tall, not flinching. At his words, "I didn't betray anyone. I revealed the truth. The people have the right to know what we've been hiding." Her father's eyes narrowed. "Do you dare question the foundation of our empire? Dare challenge everything worked for?" He stepped closer to her, his voice rising. "You will pay the price for your actio. No one, not even you, can bring down the empire without consequences." The room was silent as Lyra met her father's gaze. Her heart pounded, but her resolve was firm. The empire is already falling apart. Hiding the truth won't save it. We need to change, father. If we don't, we'll be left with nothing. The emperor's face twisted in anger. "Enough of this. You'll step down. You are no longer part of this family." As he spoke, 2 guards stepped forward to seize her, but Lyra didn't move. She stood her ground, knowing that the moment had arrived. The moment when she would either give up everything or fight for a new future. "Stop." Daniel's voice rang out from the doorway. He stepped into the room, his eyes locked on the emperor. "If you think you can silence her, you're wrong. The truth is out. The people know what you've been hiding, and they won't let you continue ruling like this." Lyra turned to look at Daniel, her heart swelling with gratitude. He had stood by her through everything, even when it seemed like the world was against them. Together, they had come this far, and together, they would face whatever came next. The emperor looked at Daniel with disdain. "Human, you dare stand here and speak to me? You have no place in this world?" But Daniel's voice was steady. "I've seen more of the galaxy than you can imagine, Emperor. And I've seen what happens when people are forced to live in the dark. The truth is here, and it's not going away. You can try to silence us, but the people will rise." That moment, the doors to the hall burst open, and a group of rebels, those who had supported Lyra and Daniel, rushed in. They were Zyrians, humans, and a mix of other species, all united by the same cause. They had heard the truth, and they had come to support Lyra in her fight for a new empire. The emperor's eyes widened in shock as he saw the rebellion grow stronger before his eyes. "This is treason," shouted. Lyra's voice rang out, clear and powerful. "No, father, this is justice." The battle for the throne had begun. The royal guards clashed with the rebels, the sound of metal against metal filling the air. Lyra, despite her royal blood, fought alongside her allies, her heart filled with determination. This was no longer about titles or bloodlines. It was about a future where all species could live together in peace, without the chains of secrecy and oppression. As the battle raged on, Daniel fought at her side, his presence a constant reminder that they were not alone in this fight. Together, they pushed forward, determined to change the fate of the empire. In the chaos, the emperor's forces began to falter. The truth had already spread too far, and the people were no longer afraid of the royal family's lies. The moment Lyra had been waiting for had finally arrived. The walls of the empire were crumbling, and the future was uncertain. But one thing was clear: Lyra was ready to lead, and the Zyrian Empire would never be the same again. The battle within the palace had been fierce, but the rebellion had proven stronger than anyone had expected. Lyra and her allies had fought bravely, and with each passing hour, the royal family's power continued to crumble. As the dust settled and the final clashes came to an end, the Zarian Empire was forever changed. Lyra stood at the center of the 8th throne room, surrounded by both her supporters and the rebel forces. The throne that once symbolized centuries of rule by her family was now empty, abandoned by her father and the remnants of his loyalists. Lyra had not only gained control of the palace but had also won the support of the people. Her vision of a new empire was beginning to take shape. Daniel stood beside her, watching as the Zyrians who had fought by their side gathered to discuss the next steps. The tension in the room was still high, but there was a sense of hope in the air that hadn't been present before. Lyra had done it. She had overthrown the royal family and exposed the truth about their bloodline. Now it was time to rebuild. "You did it," Daniel said, his voice filled with admiration. "The empire has changed forever." Lyra turned to him, her eyes tired but determined. "We've only just begun. The hardest part is still ahead of us." Room fell silent as Lyra addressed her people. "Today, we stand at the threshold of a new era. No longer will we be ruled by lies. No longer will we be forced to live under the shadows of old traditions. We will create a future where every species, every person, has a voice, where we are all equal." Her words rang through the room, and for the first time, the Zarian people saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't just a princess or a ruler who had taken the throne for power. She was a leader who genuinely wanted to change the future of their empire. A future where they could all live together in peace, free from fear and oppression. The moment. A victory felt both sweet and heavy. There was so much to do, so many changes that needed to be made. The road ahead would be long, and there were still many who didn't fully trust Lyra or her cause. But the rebellion had already sparked something inside the hearts of the people. They had seen the power of truth and unity, and they knew they couldn't go back to the way things were before. Later that evening, Lyra and Daniel stood alone on the balcony of the palace, looking out over the city. The sun had set, and the stars were starting to shine in the sky. The city below them was quiet, but there was a sense of hope in the air. People were starting to rebuild, to look forward to the future instead of living in fear of the past. "You've done it," Daniel said again, his voice soft. "You've changed everything." Lyra smiled, but it was a tired smile. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You believed in me when no one else did. You stood by my side even when it seemed impossible." Daniel shook his head. "No, Lyra, you did this. You brought us all together. You've shown the galaxy that the truth is more powerful than any empire or royal bloodline." She turned to him, her expression serious. "And now, we have to make sure that truth doesn't get lost. We have to make sure that this empire stays on the path of unity, not division." Daniel looked out over the city, his mind racing with all the possibilities. They had just begun to create a new future, but there was still so much work to be done. The power of the royal family had been overthrown, but the foundation of their empire was still fragile. It would take time, patience, and understanding to rebuild it from the ground up. "We will," he said firmly. "Together, we'll make sure. The empire lives up to its true potential, a place where all species, all people, can be free." Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "And we'll do it the right way, by listening to everyone. By making sure every voice is heard, no matter where they come from." As the days turned into weeks, Lyra and Daniel worked together to rebuild the empire. They formed a council made up of representatives from every species, including humans, to help guide the future of the Zyrian Empire. The council wasn't just a symbol of power, it was a way to ensure that no one species, no matter how powerful, could ever dominate again. It was a way to make sure that the people, all of the people, would have a voice in their future. Lyra proved to the galaxy that leadership wasn't about bloodlines or titles. It was about doing what was right, even when it was hard. It was about standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. And it was about never backing down from the truth. One day, as Lyra and Daniel walked through the palace gardens, they stopped by the same place where they had spoken for the first time, before the rebellion had begun. The garden, once a quiet and peaceful place, now felt like a symbol of everything they had fought for. It was a new beginning for them both and for the entire empire. I never thought it would come to this, Lyra said softly. But I'm glad it did. Daniel smiled, his eyes reflecting the same hope that shone in hers. So am I. With that, they turned to face the future together, knowing that their work was far from over, but that the galaxy, in all its complexity and diversity, was finally ready to change. The road ahead would be difficult, but it would be one they would walk side by side, united by the truth and by the promise of a better tomorrow.